experience that you all have had on preparing these type of documents and then seeing them actually get implemented, do cities typically have also are planning along at the same time the financial resources, because as adjustments are being made, then the city there would be projections so that the city could start getting prepared financially on their budget to be able to start implementing. Is that something you also assess?
Absolutely, we have to cost out whatever we're implementing. And again, it's very difficult to be specific because I don't know what you have now. I don't know what you have in place. I don't know how long it's been in place, how current it is. But once we establish the type of compensation plan that you're interested in, and we start looking at the market and we start making some decisions on establishing range and grade structures and placing the individual salaries in them, we would have to cost that out for the city. And sometimes, sometimes you have to do it in a two-phase project. It just depends on where you are with the market right now and what your actual compensation philosophy is. So regardless of who you bring in for this project, that may be something that the commission needs to be thinking about and maybe making some decisions on, is a compensation philosophy. Where do you want to pay in relation to the market? Where are you financially able to pay in relation to the market? So, we start with a compensation philosophy, and then we can go to the other steps. But yes, we have to cost it out so you know what you're looking at. And then depending on your budget and your financial means to be able to do it, sometimes you have to do it in two phases. I can tell you the one I'm working on in Colorado right now is a lot of money. And we have done it so far in trying to do it in two phases. We did part of it in the last fiscal year, and we're looking at moving into the next part in the next fiscal year. So just depends on how much it ends up being and where you want to pay in relation to the market.
Very good, Ms. Davis. I appreciate the insights. And I understand you don't have the information, but we're just trying to get a handle of, the type of services and the guidance really that the city would get from your assistance. Are there any questions from other members of the commission? Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you, Ms. Davis. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Somebody from our staff, be it the city manager, will be in touch with you after we've made a decision.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, Mr. Mata. We will be giving you 5 minutes, okay, and then we took a little bit longer in the question and answer, but 5 minutes to make your presentation, and then we'll open it up to the commission for any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to come before you and talk a little bit about the work that we want to do. My name is Arnoldo Mata. As I think most of you are familiar with the work that we've done already with the city. And I do have a long history of connections to the city of San Juan, having worked twice on a strategic plan for the city. And obviously, this issue that has came up most recently during your last strategic planning session. So I'm familiar with, with the need for this kind of project. I have over 30 years of experience in management and administration at various levels within cities, nonprofits, and other organizations. As I said, I do have a history of having worked here before. I am from FAR. I understand the needs of this city and this community and this region. I do have 2 other associates that are working with me who do have extensive experience. If you look through your package, you can see who they are and their background, and they will be helping me. I will be the one who will be doing most of the direct work. They will provide some assistance in some of the details and surveys and those kinds of things. But the bulk of the work that will be done, I'll be doing here. I did want to describe what we're planning to, what we foresee in terms of the work that we want to do here with you. I understand that the city is going through a lot of changes and is trying to improve itself and trying to not just grow and expand as a city, but in terms of its infrastructure and certainly its human infrastructure. And that is critical, that you have the right kind of people in the right positions. And in order to do that, you do have to have a very strong, very effective compensation system. And that's what we hope to achieve going through this process. And the process itself is relatively straightforward. We think we start by looking at what you have already in terms of the positions that you have, the kinds of positions, the number of positions, where they're located, in which departments, and then looking at the job descriptions, and then going back, working with the department heads and the city manager and certainly with the city commission, and outlining some of those issues, which job descriptions need to be strengthened, which need to be changed around, or in some cases completely changed. I do want to add one caution. One of the key things here that needs to be done from the very beginning is to be made clear to the employees what the purpose of this is. One of the things that I've seen happen before, anytime an organization starts talking about restructuring or anything close to that, where we're changing job descriptions, where we're looking at what people are doing, the immediate fear is they're going to get rid of people. And we need to make sure that that kind of issue is dealt with beforehand, to make it clear to all the employees, to the department heads, and make sure that it filters down to everybody, that that is not the intent here. The intent here is to make sure that we're compensating people the way they should be, given the work that they do, given their experience, given their knowledge, and given the market conditions, and be able to compensate them adequately and make sure that they have incentives for staying with the city. Because every time you lose an employee, you lose a lot of knowledge. And that is really, really important, because that means you have to train them again. They have to learn all kinds of things. And if you have a lot of turnover, obviously you're constantly losing that knowledge. But getting back to the process, once we have the job descriptions clarified and we've gone back and forth and agreed on what they are, then the challenge becomes trying to compare them to other cities. And that's generally who you're competing with. Here you're competing with a number of different organizations. You're competing in some areas, for example, in law enforcement. Naturally, your police officers are moving maybe to other cities, to the county, to the state, and to federal. So some of those, you're looking at different markets. It's not just one big market. Each department, each kind of skill level has its own market. So we need to look at comparing wages and job descriptions with other law enforcement agencies. And in some of the other positions, some of the lower level, for example, maybe a truck driver competes in a very different market. And we have to look at that market. So it's not, again, it's not just one big market. And some of them do go beyond the region. So we need to look at that aspect too. Again, looking at some of the lower level positions, most of this are going to be locally within the county, more than likely. Anywhere between Mission and Harlingen is where your market is going to be. For some of the other positions, as you know, you've advertised for some of those positions across the state. So for some of the upper level positions, the market is a little bit wider. So we have to consider all those kinds of things. It's not just one big market, but we do have to make some general assumptions about comparing the city to other cities of similar size in terms of budget, in terms of services, in terms of population, and in terms of workforce. So there's all kinds of things that we need to look at. Then once we have that information, we come back, make some comparisons, and then come back and give you some recommendations. And hopefully come up with a structure that fits both your need to keep employees here, but also within your budget, because you still have certain budget constraints. And more than likely, you're going to see that you will have some departments where there's a critical loss of people, and those have to be addressed first. And more than likely, you're looking at if not a 2, maybe a 3-year process for laying all those out and keeping control of your budget, making sure that you want to be able to address all those issues without overburdening your budget at the beginning, and then making sure that you have the resources in the future to be able to handle all those commitments that you're going to be making. And in some cases, there may be some changes you're going to make in terms of position titles, in terms of who they answer to, restructuring perhaps, that might even be a possibility. That's not something we're going to look at directly, but the situation may dictate that. And it's something that, of course, at every point, we expect that we will be meeting with your staff, with you, on a regular basis to let you know where we are, what the progress is, and anything that we see coming so that you know ahead of time what's going on. We foresee, depending on how fast things can proceed, we think it'll take about 6 months. We think that that's a feasible load, that things could be done within that time period. We understand that we're not the biggest firm, but we are local, and we are here. You can call us at any time. We don't have to be coming in from out of town to come in. We're familiar with the area. We don't have to spend time getting to know your area, getting to know your market. We're from here. We know what some of the issues that you're already facing. I don't know all the details of what you may need in terms of your personnel yet, but we're certainly willing to spend the time to get to know you and to understand what issues you face.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. I'll go ahead and open it up to questions from the commission.
Mr. Mata?
Yes, sir.
You were kind of asking, I know you made the comment that we're not trying to get rid of people, but this study will also show us if we're low in personnel in certain departments, or
Yes.
if we're overstaffed in some of the departments. More likely we're low, but it'll identify where the need of the city is, of like, hey, getting more employees to work in that area.
Yes, and that's crucial, because one of the problems that comes in is that people wind up having multiple duties put upon them because it's not staffed properly, or because you have turnover and maybe the position has not been filled over the years, so somebody else has to take that load. And that's important that we recognize that in order for them to be effective, they need to know exactly what they're doing and make sure that they can handle that load without falling behind. Yes, sir.
What is your experience with civil service?
With civil service, not directly. I have as a city manager and in handling personnel issues to that extent, yes.
But not compensation or,
Only in the sense that we went through the budget process and determined all those salaries and step and grades that whatever organization I work for have, yes.
now, you talk about, how many cities have you worked on a compensation plan with?
None directly, no, ma'am.
Okay. The gathering of information, you talked about working with the folks to talk about that, and we set up the kind of what it is we're looking and searching for.
Yes, ma'am.
You've heard of what is that, wage compression? I don't know what the exact term is, but when folks have been here long
Yes.
and they're going up at a different rate than someone that just comes in. And, the market may be saying they're 12, and our people that have been here for 5 years are barely at 13.
Right.
So what's your experience with seeing that kind of, and I believe we have that and we want to be able to care for those that have been loyal to the city.
Right.
What is your experience in looking at that, and how does that how do you establish so that we're not falling into that trap as we are progressing and bringing in more employees and implementing? How do you take care of something like that?
By that, we do, or at least what I would suggest, is we look at how do you bring those people up to an appropriate level, and doing that over a period of time. Moving them up from one day to the next is difficult in terms of budget process.
Right.
And it also seems unfair to others. But I think there's a way to step them up and give them credit for years of service and knowledge and experience, and also give them credit for trainings and education. And obviously, the more of that you have, then obviously the easier it is to create a step system for them to move up. But doing it in a way that is fair to them, but yet within your budget constraints.
Very good. And then the tools that you were using to gather information would be through surveys, through actual just visiting with the folks. How much time would our people be uh, investing at the same time with you?
That's hard to say how much time. It depends, to some extent, how extensive your personnel descriptions are, your job descriptions are at this point. But obviously, we would do a couple of things. One is obviously looking at what you have already, visiting with your department heads and visiting with your individual personnel, and trying to match up where the job description actually, the written job description matches up with what they actually do on a day-to-day basis. And then also going to other organizations and looking at their job descriptions. For example, we would work with, through the city manager's office, work with a couple of other cities and ask for information from them and compare, for example, a truck driver who drives a garbage truck. How does that job description differs from what they provide? And is it similar, is it different? And then coming back and adjusting it in that way.
So when you meet with personnel, now, do they have to work around your schedule, or
No,
do you
sir.
work around their schedule?
No, as I said, we're here, we can meet with them at any time. We can meet with them during their work hours, after hours, whatever we can arrange with the individual and with the city manager. Obviously, the best time would be during work hours. But no, we meet at their convenience.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And policy manuals, you've written policies?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
For, how many have you, for
I've
cities, or what did you?
I've written one for a county organization, for the Hidalgo County Housing Authority, and one for 2 cities.
All right. Any other questions?
When you prepare for different tiers and different departments on pay scale,
Yes, sir.
would you be comparing against local cities around, surrounding us? Or-
We would have to compare against who we're competing with. And in most cases, it's going to be cities. That would make the logical sense. But understand that you're also competing with retail opportunities and other areas. And you're also, depending on what else is going on in the market, if the Eagle Ford field starts hiring people again, you're going to be competing with them. It may not be a lot, but to some extent, you will compete with them.
What would be the cost of living right now at this?
You know, I could not answer that. No.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mata.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we've heard the presentations from the 2 different firms that are requesting for consideration, and I'd like to go ahead and open it up for discussion. And I'm going to ask Ms. Cordero something. I think one of the things that resonates for me is the civil service, because that's so different than your regular. And how we handle that. I know that's one of the things that, reasons why I wanted the study to be done, and I've been requesting, that we be able to look at, each one has to be looked at differently, because there's just differences in how those are handled, but yet equity amongst all our departments. So how essential in civil service would you be able to assist in that, or getting somebody that has the expertise in doing that would be beneficial to you?
I mean, obviously, somebody that has experience in civil service would be very helpful.
Right.
Because when the city first implemented or adopted civil service, there were still several things, that were pending, that were still unclear. So I think somebody that has the civil service experience as well would be very beneficial, and would assist the 2 departments, PD and fire, to
Right.
be able to assess their needs, just like all the departments, but PD and fire are going to need a lot of assistance in doing this as well.
And can't the city attorney and the civil service attorney handle that kind of situations?
They can.
So really, I mean,
They can.
For wages?
But, I'm sorry?
For wages?
But not necessarily for wages. They can for the process of as far as procedures and practices. Okay, but as far as wages are concerned, it's best to do, and this is what I recommend, it's best to do it all together, all at once. Because really what you're doing, you're trying to classify positions, you're trying to, in general, right, not just civil service, you're trying to classify positions with what they're currently doing, what, like what they've mentioned, they both mentioned. What work are they doing? What work shouldn't they be doing? What is it that we're doing because we're short-staffed? What is that one position doing that maybe another should be doing, or you can combine duties? It's just an array of things, and it may have to be done in phases.
And I
It's a
think
very
that,
big project that, in my opinion, we're going to be needing this and utilizing this for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
It's a big investment.
yes, it is. And it's a one that we need. We did one 10 years ago, but it just, for whatever reason, wasn't followed. And I think that the reason civil service is important because we have longevity when it comes to the, do we have with the firefighters also, Chief?
Yes.
And police that we don't have for our regular employees?
You don't have that for non-civil.
We don't. And then we have certifications that we do have for them that we don't have with our regular employees.
Correct.
And then we have overtime compensation that's looked at very differently because of the type of work that they do. So
Certifications, assignment pay, vacation pay, you've
Right.
got several that you have in civil service that you don't have for non-civil.
right, and it might be that that's because that's the way it's supposed to be handled. We haven't implemented in others, but I know that they're definitely, because of the kind of shift and the kind of ways that they work, that it is different. And those were some of the ways we're trying to compensate as well through the longevity pay that we don't see in others. So I think because of those specifics and those particulars, as we're evaluating for our civil service folks, and I think there was a very strong point about making sure that as we're implementing some of these policies, that they're all falling within the the guidelines of civil service. So I think that because of that and the necessity, and really those are the folks that have been asking us to take a look at carefully how we're compensating, and is there any way that we can be equitable across the board. That's going to be the most important thing, that all our employees, but we're particularly conscientious of the differences and the civil service regular, the regular. So because of that, yeah?
Mayor, let me throw something, I just thought about this. The election in May, the special election is for what purpose?
Which one?
Collective bargaining.
Oh, the collective bargaining.
How is that gonna affect anything of this?
Plus I guess it would. Depends what happens.
It depends what happens, so, and I'm just throwing this out, but what happens if you all do this and then there's collective bargaining 2 months from now?
Well, I think we would have to take it at that point, because the problem here is that it's not just for them, it's for the entire city. So, but I think that's a very important proponent that we're looking at for that. That if it happens, then I suppose it's another guideline. If it doesn't, we still have to be able to deal with that. Yeah, and it might mean that if something were having to change, at some point, we would be able to change the scope of the study and focus.
You have your civil service rules, you have your SOPs from the departments. But when let's talk about this collective bargaining, it's going to affect it, obviously, it will
Sure.
affect it.
Yeah, but that would
It
take
will.
priority, though. The
The what?
police and the fire over anything else, wouldn't it, for collective bargaining?
I
As
mean,
far as
if
working the numbers and,
Right, if the committee, or it's voted in, right, then obviously it might.
Yeah, but we still can't forget the rest of the, and that's my big thing, is it has to be equitable. But with those kind of aspects.
Two things different.
It
yeah,
is,
two
and that's why I'm
different things
saying
going
that
on
specialty in that area, I think is necessary. With that being said, I think Mr. Mata has definitely done well by us in the past and has done a great job when he did with the strategic, and we're very appreciative of that. I just feel that the other firm had expertise in, and someone on staff who is legal with civil service, and they've worked civil service as well as regular compensation plans. So I like for you all to consider the folks, I don't remember the name, I'm sorry. What was that name?
Then Ross and Ganaway.
Yeah, as our representatives in this comprehensive plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Under consider authorizing the Did we do this one already, H, Mr. Arjona?
Yes, that was in
That's the
case
same
it
one,
wasn't
right?
approved, right.
Okay, so we're, no action on H. There's a consent agenda for the budget review of January 31st, 2017. Is there any particular questions for Mr. Garza on that, from members of the commission? Mr. Garza, the only thing I'd like you to take a look at, I think we already discussed it, just about everybody is at the maximum on their professional services. So you could just take a look at them. Some are at 80, some are at 90, and I think we've discussed some of those because they're upfront fees, but
Okay.
just keeping an eye on some of those areas. I would appreciate it. Maybe I'll touch bases with you on that.
Sure, I will.
Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We now enter into executive session. The City of San Juan Commission will convene an executive session under the Open Meeting Act, exception to the rule, Chapter 551.071, private consultation with attorney, 0551.072, deliberations about real property, discussion of a real matter being 260,000 square feet on 5.9688 acres, City of San Juan, situated Lot 29 ML Woods subdivision. We're now into executive session at 7:48. Back out of executive session into open session at 7:59 regarding item number 1 on executive. Is there a motion for approval as recommended in executive session?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And there will be no action on item number 2. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 8 o'clock.